So the argument is that, okay, if we did nothing, billions of people would die this century that wouldn't die if we could magically cure all diseases. Well, we can't magically cure all diseases, but we can do a number of things that make it not insane to talk about curing all diseases. One of the easiest to understand and have some faith in is utility scale molecular sensing, but it's also the one you haven't heard of as an answer. It's also one that's not generating a lot of attention or having people talk about how important it is constantly in the news, every headline, every day. Like just the sun being blotted out by the discussion of that other thing that you associate with the phrase curing all diseases, which sure might do it. It just might do it. But there's this other thing that is also, if we could build it, very likely to do that. And it doesn't quite have the deep, profound, almost mystically vast mathematical unpredictability and Shoggoth like uninterpretability and wonder and confusion and arguing about what it will mean that the other thing has. It's much more of a sure bet. It's much more of something that's actually likely to come to pass, something that we can count on our ability to engineer if we actually try. It rests on the idea of single devices, that you could get everything into a single device to be able to get rich information from any kind of analyte that can translocate a pore in which ionic current is being measured, and other ways of taking things through a pore, through a tiny hole, and that this range of sizes is vast, that the limits of this detection technology are pretty much unlimited in one way, because you could technically do ionic modulation sensing on a blue whale if you had a big enough pore and enough current. And enough voltage, I think you would blow the whale up. So to get enough signal to noise, I think you would definitely just vaporize the water or blow up the whale. I don't know what the physics of the gigapore would be, but down to things you can barely see that are millimeter scale, sub-millimeter scale, and then single micron scale, tens of microns, things in your blood, cells in your body, down to bacteria that are on the scale of single digit microns, and down to viruses on the scale of 100 nanometers. And of course there's violation of these generally where we're saying these different things should be in the tree of stuff, because there are of course viruses that are as large as large human cells and larger. I think there are viruses you can see with the naked eye, but I'm not sure. I think maybe under the right conditions you can. Under like very much perfect conditions. I know that I've seen like a 1 micron pore with my naked eye with very bright light shining through silicon. And a lot of interesting photonic stuff can also happen with pores. But we're not talking about the interesting photonic stuff right now. We're just getting back to this idea of tiny holes, and you can see what's there. And if you look enough at what's there in enough different ways, you'll be able to train a model to tell you about absolutely anything that goes through it. And then you design a device that contains these sensors, and voila, you have universal molecular sensing, and you have something worth. You have something worth putting in all the toilets in the world and all the air handling systems, and giving people the keys and the control to the private keys. I mean, the ability to keep all the data there and share it as they want. And that's possible. That's possible in a way that people are still arguing about the other thing and how powerful it can get. People have very strong opinions on it, and I don't want to countermand anyone anywhere in that structure of opinions, because I'm not claiming special insight. I don't know where AI will lead in a decade. I have no strong faith in any particular outcome. The only thing I'm sure of is completely separate from that, and acknowledging tools built with these systems and models as being incredibly useful, and making and that they will perhaps I think they most likely will make substantial discoveries in biology. My plan here is that even with those substantial discoveries in biology, you are still going to want universal molecular streaming at home. You're still going to want this. It's going to be meaningful. It's going to be a deep part of the human experience. It's going to be an absolute must to have in a world with robust synthetic biology. It actually gives the whole species a new form of sight. It gives us a new sense, a new thing, like massively greater numbers of people will be able to apply their intelligence to, and their understanding and their questioning, and it'll turn every toilet on the planet, every kitchen sink, every bathtub drain, every air conditioner. It'll turn all of those into what would now be advanced single molecule research labs, single cell research labs, genomics research labs, molecular and cellular biology labs. And it would work in concert with other techniques. It is not a blotting out the sun of all other technical approaches and possibilities. It is not MRI. It is not large-scale structural information that you would be constantly getting. All of those things should be democratized in our homes as well. Other ways of seeing small molecules will remain interesting and can benefit from vastly more development, and will. And that's what I'm saying. And now I'm looking at, how many is it? Only 637 results. Oh, those are the free full text. Okay, I've got to take off free full text and do the search again. There are 1,606 results for solid state nanopore with a hyphen, and I'm still dubious that that's all of them. And I'm surprised that it only goes back to 2001. I feel like I can try to enter an earlier range. I'm going to go all the way back to 1900. And I'm going to apply that. I'm going to see if it changes the results at all. Okay, so actually for some reason it's saying 1900 to the end of the year 3000, which is not what I put in, but that should cover everything. Now if I put in nanopore, what do I get with that same very, very, very broad range? Okay, so the first use of the word nanopore was 1992. Okay, what's that thing called on Google? Google Ngrams? Like the thing that lets you search across Google Ngram Viewer. Okay, let's just look for nanopore and see how far back we can get. Bam. Okay, we have the word first existed somewhere in the corpus. There is apparently a single recorded usage of the word in the year. Okay, this is fascinating how far back it actually goes. There is a single somebody used it in 1868, but I doubt that that's real. Like, why doesn't it let you see? Like, why doesn't Google Ngram let you actually see the reference? Do I just not know how to do that? What is the reference in 1863? How do I do this? About Ngram Viewer? Huh. What does Ngram Viewer do? Okay, I know what that is. But I want to be able to actually see the reference. How do you actually see the reference? Okay. Well, okay, let's just see what it has for solid state nanopore. Because I almost suspect that if somebody said nanopore in 1865, like it's probably It's probably literally like some other language, and those letters have to happen to be there because there's like parts of those letters in other words, in like French and some other language. And it probably, or I don't know, what if there's like a really funny, if there were anything prominent, like super early sci-fi or speculation, where somebody actually meaningfully put nano and por together. Like, how far back does por go? Like, I assume that's fairly ancient, but let's see. Let's see how far back por goes. Por. Oh my, por goes way back before 1858, but it doesn't really take off until the early 1930s, and has sort of been a not super uncommon. It looks like that'd be 1 in 10,000, 1 in 6 in a million words. Like 1 in 125,000 words are the word por. Okay. And then nanopore, although this part is definitely not reflected in PubMed, there's a 1972 usage of nanopore that from that point on, I would suspect these are real usages of nanopore. Ooh, the word peaked in 2013. It had a little peak, and then it's still rising. They go up to 2022, and it is a 5 zeros before the 1 on the right side percent. So, okay, 1%, tenth of a percent, hundredth of a percent, thousandth of a percent, 10,000th of a percent, 100. So roughly like 1 in 75,000 words is nanopore in their corpus. I don't know. I wonder how that compares to sequencing. Let's try sequencing. Sequencing has like non-science meanings as well. So we're getting sequencing in the 20s. There's like a what doesn't seem like a coincidence sort of isolated bump from 1865 to 1874 that, you know, before they knew what DNA was, so it would not have been DNA sequencing. But then you start seeing sequencing in the late 30s, and I doubt it referred even then to DNA sequencing. It was probably, there was a dribble, a hard to detect dribble of its usage all throughout those years, but you just had a bump in the 1860s. When it first, it kind of appeared sporadically before. I assumed the meaning was like, maybe the meaning there had something to do with some kind of math operation or computation or something. Okay, now when we look at DNA sequencing, we're looking at kind of a smoother curve. Okay, what point am I getting at here? Wait. Somebody said DNA sequencing in 1867? No. That's hilarious. I have to take a screenshot of that. Ha. That's hilarious. Wow. What is it? Why is DNA and sequencing together in a text from 1868? That can't be. Okay, did I need to put it in quotes? Let's try this again. Okay, the bump disappears. Wait, is the bump gone? Damn it, the bump is gone if I put it in quotes. You know what? I think it considers the quotes part of what's there. Shit, I really don't know. I don't know if you have to, if it treats, no, because it treated it as one thing. So of course you didn't need to, idiot. Don't bad talk yourself, okay? I wonder when, okay. I want to see, okay, so there's Beer and Mudrianakis, who are these awesome dudes. Mudrianakis. Beer and Mudrianakis. Okay, Mudrianakis is not here. which is like Feynman would be here. I mean, Mudrianakis was pretty cool. Feynman is, of course, he's common. But am I misspelling Dr. Mudrianakis? Mudrianakis? People called him something else, like Van or something. Let's look up Mudrianakis EM sequencing. So this guy and his colleague Beer. Oh yeah, Cannavarioti refers to him in this paper. Osmolated DNA. Yep, this is Tessie stuff. She's like the only one referring to him. That's hilarious. Oh my god, this brilliant researcher from the 60s is pretty much like it's other things come up with EM sequencing before him. I wonder how long it would take me to find those old papers. I haven't seen those old papers in a long time. Beer and Mudrianakis. It'll bring back memories. I mean, I emailed Andre Geim about this and I was wrong. And I mean, I was wrong about this anyway. So Beer and Mudrianakis, I think people called him Van who knew him. He was kind of a character. I hope he's still alive, but I have to find out. Van, are you still alive? Do people call you Van? Yeah, so here's one. Ooh, this is pretty. This was Van's 1960. This is Mudrianakis and Beer. 1964. I forgot this was in Nature. Holy shit, this was in Nature. Some time ago, we proposed an electron microscope procedure for the determination of the bases in nucleic acids. This method requires that electron-dense base-specific group be attached to the nucleic acid molecule. On close examination of the electron microscope, the visible electron-dense groups indicate the positions of these bases to which they are specifically attached. So this was a brilliant paper, and I've definitely read it, but it is still it is not a free paper. I don't know if Mudrianakis and Beer, I don't know if they have any that are like free. I had to hunt them all down. I had to hunt really old ones down at libraries just to give you an idea. Like I had to go search for the old Beer and Mudrianakis. And that was part of when I found that like there's a 1958 fucking paper where they basically they could have realized that they had discovered graphene and the fact that it was interesting to have done so like many years before Andre Geim did. And I sent this to Andre Geim because nobody's heard of Mudrianakis and Beer and he hadn't. But he was very gracious and surprised me because he doesn't have any ego about it at all, because it turns out there's all these other groups that kind of discovered or like came close to discovering graphene, probably isolated it and just didn't make the sort of like the imaginative leap. And this is probably all wrong, and I actually need to like read all the papers that he sent me to have an opinion about this, but I'm telling you where I stood on this empirically before I sent him the email. So he wasn't shocked that Beer and Mudrianakis had basically isolated graphene in 1958 with like liquid nitrogen cooled methanol ice instead of Scotch tape. That was fun to say. So Andre, I don't know how to say his name, and if he ever hears this, which is exceedingly unlikely, then he would like probably be annoyed that I'm mispronouncing his name. Anyway, he very graciously sent me all these references and enlightened me as to the fact that there were a whole bunch of kind of semi-prior close to discoveries of graphene. And that wasn't what I don't think that was his stroke of genius. He was his stroke of genius was, holy shit, this is a material that's a single atom thick, and it might be incredibly unique and powerful and interesting. And I think that's what it was. But I feel like he's the kind of dude who's probably wrote a book on it that I haven't read, so I feel like a jerk. And I'm not going to talk to him ever unless I read it, whatever it is, because it's probably a really interesting story. And we should hear, there should be like like if only like we could actually make like all of the Nobel Prize winners like as entertaining to like larger numbers of people than like the best Apple TV series or whatever your favorite thing is, whatever's like sort of a compelling like biographical dramas. Like if you could just do that with that sort of stuff, but it always gets made so stupid. It always has to have these kind of lurid plot lines. There has to be like sex and death and feelings involved, which are all really there with science. But I think on that level, it's just not like, scientists don't have that many like swashbuckling moments, and it kind of like the orgasm of scientific discovery is the result of the orgasm of scientific discovery. Okay, like I call a handful of moments in my life where I got something to work or I proved that something existed, and I knew something, however small, that was like profoundly true and no human had ever known it before that moment, which sounds grandiose, but it's actually what we all do whenever we find anything, and it's fucking orgasmic. And like none of those things are like should be nature paper. Well, shit, should have some of them be nature papers? I'm working towards some of them being worthy of nature papers. The point is, I think sliding occlusion could be a nature paper, but damn the work I have to do to organize the data at this point. And it's almost better if I can just show people some videos and convince them instead of stopping to write a paper. Unless that paper would actually give me the clout that I need to raise money, and people would go, oh look, Kent has a nature paper about sliding occlusion. Shit, why don't I do that? This seems like a good idea. If anyone if anyone ever listens to this, like just find out or email me, kent@epicquest.bio. Okay, so for some reason, I think there's a conspiracy by Big Electron Microscope to erase Mudry, Nakas, and Beer from PubMed. That actually is quite unlikely. And he's just gonna leave the belches in because he's not talking to an audience. He's talking to the future superintelligence that he hopes will save him. Okay, this is fun.
When I tell my students that learning about rhetoric is going to...
You know what would be fun is like while I'm doing this, if I also went live on TikTok on my phone. But if I do that, then I have to actually put on a shirt. None of you can tell that I'm not wearing a shirt because, TikTok. But now, if I turn the camera on, I'm going to be facing that situation. And where's my Hawaiian shirt? Do I have to walk all the way over somewhere? You know what? I'm going to practice some chords for a moment, okay? But even then, I better put my shirt on because I'm fucking Okay, I was going to say I'm fucking disgusting because I don't want to be like... Who's that very large African-American woman artist who's pretty talented, plays clarinet, notably large... Not as large as me. I can't think of her name right now, which is Pure Senescence. Had that a lot lately. 51, but I think my sheer retrieval of diverse facts is perhaps becoming weaker than it once was. So I'm just gonna practice some chords and start a. Wait! Don't do that. And start a live. For no reason at all, find a well-lit area. So yes, I will get back to just as being about science, but I quickly want to practice the chord changes in this song, so just give me a moment. This is such a hard chord change right here. I I can kind of play this chord, but it's bonus points if you can guess what the song is. I can't do it. Ah! Mangled fingers. Tongue, get your plane right on time. I know you've been no. It's awful. Stop. Whew. That was not right. That was not right. Hey, I'm not really paying attention to the live, but if you got questions, science questions, go to epicquest.bio, or come find me on Twitter at epicquest.bio. If you want to talk about science, look at my profile, etc. And you can actually talk to me live on there. I don't know how to talk to you live on here. I'm literally just looking at a selective reagent for the study of base sequence. Let's look at the earliest of the Beer and Mudrynakis papers. So it lists 4 Beer and Mudrynakis papers, and I know that there was one before that. But give me the free full text. Or wait, no, just give me the full text. So if anybody, I should just put this up as a note. If anybody wants to talk about science or anything I'm doing or whatever, you just get my attention. But I can't. I'm trying to create for 3 social media platforms simultaneously, which is kind of annoying. So trying to get my message out there about utility scale molecular sensing to whoever may show up and respond to the good Lord's word. Oh, actually, it's just my word. I shouldn't say the good Lord's word. It's, but I think it's a mission from God, but I want to stay humble. Base sequence determination in nucleic acids with the electron microscope. 3, chemistry and microscopy of guanine labeled DNA. Oh my God, this is so fun. This was such a fun paper to look back on. Oh, so this was back when I actually read every word of papers, not because I'm old enough to have seen this 1965 paper when it came out, because I was -9 when it came out. But it was, hi there, got any science questions, go to epicquest.bio and find me on Twitter at epicquest.bio. Some time ago, we proposed an electron microscopy procedure for determining the order of nucleotides and nucleic acids. The method required nucleotide selective reagents, which could be made visible in the electron microscope. I wonder if anybody, should I interpret, maybe stop every few, let's just read this. Let's read these and see what happens. Got questions about science, go to epicquest.bio. Some time ago, we proposed an electron microscopic procedure for determining the order of nucleotides and nucleic acids. So they're proposing using these things that point down inside of a vacuum in a big metal tube, and they cause a stream of electrons to fly towards something, and because the electrons are so tiny themselves, the way that they scatter is a lot more useful than a normal light-based microscope, because photons are a lot bigger than electrons. So so the idea was that this was the first explicitly like detailed master plan to sequence DNA in any way, shape, or form was electron microscopy. And these guys there were like various like little islands of people who heroically worked toward trying to do it. And then there were, some people, some very cool people, some extremely cool people, I think, got some of the very most impressive type of data on this stuff, and learned a hell of a lot about this world between like 2006 to 2012, and that was one of the major efforts that was I'm still extremely proud to have been a part of. And so this was Mudryn and Beer, and this was basically their idea for what they were going to put on guanine. And that they're really getting into the weeds here. Subsequently, it was shown that the coupling of diazotized 2-amino parabenzene disulfonic acid with the 5' nucleotide monophosphates is highly selective. At pH 9.2, the rate of coupling reaction with guanylic acid was about 60 times higher than any other nucleotide. Furthermore, it was suggested that the reaction with the other nucleotides might involve the 3' hydroxyl of the sugar, in which case this reaction should be hindered in the polynucleotide chain, improving the observed selectivity. Okay, so this is like already in 1965 into the fine details of how you're going to attach a molecule that lights up in an electron microscope to a piece of DNA based selectively. Because lighting up in an electron microscope is different than lighting up in a normal light microscope. When you light up in an electron microscope, it's because of you're causing a lot more electrons to get messed up in some way when they're coming towards you. So with the kind of electron microscopy that they're generally thinking about here, there are single electrons coming down, right? And the shapes and patterns with which they're coming down from this there's some kind of needle-like thing at the very top that has a number of different names, that's sort of like where there's voltage and electrons can come off of its tip and fly down through this column, and there are enough of them that like you can kind of change their trajectories so you can get them all like focused at different spots. And there's one form where you're putting a lot at different spots and sort of scanning, and what you're really measuring are not the one. You're not measuring. You're measuring the electrons that don't get through. That ultimately is what you get, right? And because it's pointing to something that could just be counting all of those, but you're looking for the ones that don't get through. And the reason that you're looking for the ones that don't get through is that the things that are lit up are the things with a lot of positive density in their nuclei. So, for instance, in the case of higher Z metal, of atoms with significant number of protons in their nuclei, as you go up the periodic chart from left to right and down, you get larger and larger Z, which is the positive charge inside the nucleus, which you remember is like pretty small relative to the electron shell, and those are pretty far away. And you've got these electrons zipping by, and most of them just pass through, but they're more likely to be thrown off track if there's a whole bunch of protons in one place nearby, which like positively deflects them. They're going too fast to get like actually absorbed by it, but they just go flying past it because they almost kind of got absorbed by it, and it changes their direction slightly, and then you're able to count those when they hit this open edge of this detector that blocks most of the ones that don't actually scatter. So you can just imagine, you got your detector in this like sort of focused beam of high energy electrons coming down, and you've got a substrate, for instance. Imagine it's just like a single layer of carbons in this perfect configuration, and just the electronics of those that causes different things to happen. So what there's like all this beautiful research that is mostly like, you know, I don't know if we're going to have high throughput electron microscopy DNA sequencing anytime soon, but someone could get something like it soon, right? If they put a lot of money into the electron microscopy and the data acquisition, and like just I still think there's every reason in the world to like go for like massively scaled cryo EM as fast as you can go, making it as cheap as you can. Like give everyone a super powered cryo EM on their desktop at home. And I realize I'm talking about massive engineering things, but these kind of things are as beautiful as and exciting as like going to other planets and seeing other star systems. Like if I could just, you know, if I could see anything, I wanted it like a large scale with lots of rich detail. One issue with electron microscopy, why cryo would be good for this, is that you might be able to see like very large fields of like different kinds of things, and ideally at some point you get enough signal from that you actually like they actually you wouldn't need ensembles, but you'd be doing it at a single molecule level. And I think there's potential for that sort of approach to result in that. And I'm kind of surprised that to my knowledge hasn't gone further in like, you know, a radical vision of optimization. Though I would support anyone who's trying to do that, and should probably try to talk some EM people into doing that, because I think it's very worthwhile. Still, but I don't know where the frontier of the physics is. I don't know how realistic it is. The thing I mostly think about is how to get universal signals out of passage through tiny holes. So that's it. From and tiny can be, again, like I talked about whale fishing earlier, with the idea that, you know, like the basic idea is you've got a hole and something goes through it, and you're getting information about what it was based on changing some measurement in a sensor that's looking at that hole in some way as things come through it. And the most common thing is that you set it up like an electrical circuit. So it's basically like a wire with single ions in salt carrying the charge, essentially. And that pore itself is like a resistor, if you remember your EE, which I barely do, but I know it at about the level of understanding that that's a resistor circuit. You've got a voltage and you've got a pore. And the pore itself is like where the ions kind of have to crowd through and squeeze, and they can't carry as much charge as quickly as if it were just all open. Because if it were all open, it would just be like a short, and you'd and you wouldn't be able to detect anything, so you have to constrain it somehow. And then there are other methods for like seeing what comes across that pore in a great amount of detail. I had this I really enjoyed this brainstorm I had the other day, kind of understanding what happened to to nitrogen vacancy, to atomic vacancy quantum sensing in pores. And I got the impression that some companies had and some efforts, I think in the literature, I think there are things that are, if I remember correctly, there's some really cool work where, you know, they were like making plasmonic nanosensors in pores. Haven't really seen like all of this stuff. It would just be so revolutionary if you could somehow commercialize all of this stuff simultaneously. That's what I'd really want.